Cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul's awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. Knees of state, you divine lions and lionesses, welcome back to the Sovereign Soul Show with myself, Brad Wozni. This is the three Albertan warriors, persecuted patriots with zero filters. Pastor Artur Pawlowski and Freedom Convoy founder James Bauder return with me to confront Venezuela, Canada's wide open satanic crackdown on faith freedom and divine dissent, whether it's through Bill C-9, the gun grab, the land grab, Ottawa's cabal power machine, where the deep state regime elements across political, media, business, military, and the judicial landscapes continue to mirror the stranglehold once imposed on Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba. What's more, with nearly 80,000 Canadians executed via MAID, these are Canada's own numbers, plus taxpayer-funded grooming of kids in classrooms, libraries, and the taxpayer-sponsored mutilation of Canada's children nationwide, the end times are here. Join us for this very special show on Holy Week and share it with patriots everywhere, as CSIS and U.S. law enforcement alone have continually warned Canada is a safe haven for terrorists. And welcome back, everybody. You are noticing that I am wearing a shirt which echoes the sentiments of Pastor Pawlowski. Get out, get out, get out. 5-year anniversary of your video going viral at the street church, Pastor Artur, with all of them trying to shut you down, but they would keep the liquor stores and the strip bars open. And so thank you very much for being here. You're still deeply in the fight, and James is in exile in the United States of America, having applied for asylum, and we're still waiting to hear back. Both of these gentlemen can update you with more on their backgrounds. And then obviously we're expanding it out to what's going on in China and the fact that everybody faces persecution for quoting the Bible, and then even with posts and tweets the government no longer agrees with, and they want to throw you in jail for 2 years minimum. Gentlemen, welcome back. We'll go over to Pastor Artur first and then over to James. Artur.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's so awesome to see the T-shirt, to get out. So many things happened since that moment in history that sometimes, you kind of detached yourself from what happened. And it's a good reminder, because that was an unbelievable and amazing time in history and in our lives. If you would say to me that this video is going to be viewed over 1 billion times, that me yelling at those Gestapo, which is political police, it's going to stir a movement, a global movement of hope, which I get contacted to this day of people telling me that because of the Get Out video, because of what we did, people went back to church, the hope was restored, the freedom entered their minds, their hearts, their spirits. If you would say all of those things to me in a morning of that Saturday Passover celebration, I would simply say you're out of your mind. I would not believe you. And I'm sure James can echo that with his Freedom Convoy, that the Canadian trackers, those timid, nice, polite, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry that I'm saying sorry, are going to trigger a symbol, a global symbol of resistance and a willingness to stand up and fight for God and country. I'm sure James would not believe you. So it's so good to be here with you again. And, I'm sure the red color on you, Brad, is triggering demons left and right. And make America great again. We need to make the world great again, because for the past 40, 50, 60 years there has been an ongoing attempt to remove what's decent, what's truthful, what's right away from the public square. And that's why we get such a mess in our schools, which of course they're not teaching our children anymore. There is very little teaching. There is a lot of indoctrination, and of course, we can talk hours and hours about what's happening. Justice system has fallen. The healthcare system has fallen. Politics. What a human manure. In a sewer canal, politics has become. Those people are being caught left and right of breaking the law, and zero accountability, no checks and balances. Our judges, most of them are just gangsters. They're just mafia criminals, and the politicians are more than happy to keep selling our country for trinkets, for silver coins. So it's good to update, the people about what's going on. I just got back from Ottawa, so I'm going to give it about to James, so he can say hi to the folks. But there is a lots of things going on in Canada, and I saw that firsthand. I was at the House of Commons. I was sitting at the gallery listening to the in quote politicians, and it's quite funny because when I entered, I guess they got the ding ding, red alert, Pawlowski's in the house, and immediately they had multiple officers assigned just to watch me, including undercover. And it was kind of flattering, James and Brad. It was kind of like cute. Okay, I still have the edge. I guess I'm still doing the right thing. If such a corrupted people are still afraid of us, that means when demons fear you, when liars, pathological liars fear you, that means you must be doing something that is right. And of course, we are to stand with truth and freedom and God, and we are to protect the most vulnerable, the children. We can talk about MAID and abortion, all those craziness that they have unleashed upon the Canadian people. But it's so good, James, to see you. I know you're writing a book. I can't wait to read the book, because I believe that your book is going to give the people the whole narration of the Freedom Convoy, which I think people do not know. There's a lot of infiltrators, a lot of cons left and right that kind of hijacked what you have done. And I remember when the truck started to roll, and of course you were behind it, and I think many people have forgotten, or they have chosen to forget, and they don't really care anymore. And I think, gentlemen, that's the saddest part of the story, that we did lay down our lives. Literally, we laid down our lives. During that time, I said to the police, shoot me down, but I'm not quitting. I talked to the politicians. I don't care if you lock me and throw a key away. This is the hill to die on, because I was not doing this just for myself. I was doing this for the next generations. I was doing this for my children, and potentially when they're going to have children, for their children, and other the next generations. I was doing this for people, for Canadians, for others, and of course for God. And it's so sad that many people moved on with their lives, and they have simply chosen to forget that we're still in the trenches. That for us, maybe you can go to restaurants and golf and go to your hockey game, and life is good, you moved on. But people like Brad, people like me, and many others, people like James, we're still in the trenches. We're still in the middle of this insanity. Our fight continues. They are still want to hurt us. I've heard about Norman, that they arrested him. We can talk about that as well. What happened? Like, what are the charges? This is insane. Years are passing. Society moved on, but we are being destroyed by this corrupted to the core, a mafia organization. That's what it is, a lawless mafia enterprise called the Canadian government. So, James, it's so good to see you. You're still in the trenches. You're still fighting. You're not losing hope. You're documenting everything that happened to you, what you have seen, how it started, and it's so needed. It's so needed. Those books are needed, because during the shows we can only talk for so long, and people tune out. But when you grab a book, you can actually go back to it, back and forth, and just keep reading and getting the truth out. And I think it's so important for you as soon as you can. I know you are feeling a little bit under the gun, but I would encourage you, the sooner the better, to get that truth out of there. And it's so funny, in a cute way, if you will. It's very flattering that my book, they feared my book so much that they confiscated. Like, think about this: Canada, 21st century, and the Canadian government confiscated my book 3 times, and to this day, I have a hard time to get the book crossing the borders, which is insane. I mean, it's just a book. It's not a weapon of mass destruction. It's just a book documenting my journey. You know what I witnessed, what happened to me, to my family, and that's it. That's all. But you see, here is the thing. That's why I'm telling this to you, James, because when you tell the truth, when you bring the truth and you give it to the public, suddenly, when the truth meets the lie, the house built on lies, the whole house crumbles. That's what they are afraid of. They are terrified of the truth because they know what they have done. Don't kid yourself. They know, all the parties, the conservatives, the liberals, the crazy NDPers, they all know what they have done to the Canadian people, how they betrayed God and country and society, humanity, and everything that is decent. So I'm so glad that you're still kicking, fighting in the trenches. Brad, thank you so much for organizing this. And James, in our books, you are a hero. In our books, in God's book, you are a hero. And I believe that you will be greatly rewarded for your stand. Just do not quit. Do not throw a towel. Do not throw a towel. I know it's hard. Keep plowing, no matter what. One day at a time. Just keep doing. In the end of the day, we have to understand that we must, for whatever reason, God called us, and we must finish what we started. We must finish what we started.
Amen to that.
Amen to that.
James, just so you know, I've been attempting to show your book cover. I've done it 4 different ways, renamed it, re-screenshotted it, and StreamYard is still not allowing me to show your book. So I guess the name is James Bauder is still banned by Google and StreamYard. And that's, again, just another form of persecution that these two men you see on screen that they face. And by the way, James, just before we go to you, I want to read off from Rumble because we can see the YouTube comments here. We have people in Rumble just saying, "Canadian heroes, thank you. You're true patriots." That comes from Theodore Rust, the Patriot, and says, "Real Canadians, and God will never forget. There are still thousands of us. You all showed up to showed the Western world, and people did stand up." And so that goes to you, Pastor Artur. There you are. Beautiful.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Get through. Yep. See it.
I guess I'm wired a little bit differently than most of the Canadians. I hate when the devil wins. I wake up in the morning, and as a hobby right now for the past 30 years, my hobby is to give him a bloody nose every morning and then every afternoon. So when things don't go the way they're supposed to go, I always think about how I can, you wicked, evil devil, how I can beat you today and give you a bloody nose. So
love it. Love it. And over to you, Mr. Bauder. In exile, having applied for asylum, the first Canadian that we're aware of in history, because you faced 15 years in a Canadian jail for simply spawning the movement that changed the world in all of our lifetimes, at least in the last 250 years. To you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Brad, for bringing Pastor Artur and myself in a reunion, so to speak. Looking at you, my friend Artur, brings back a lot of memories, and Brad wearing the Get Out shirt. Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest memories that still to this day I cannot forget. I watched and observed in Calgary as a Calgarian, and Artur, you're in Calgary when that event went down, and then when we started seeing the images of a humble, peaceful pastor being dragged and thrown into the gulag, and your resistance and standing up for the truth, for the righteous, for God, really impacted me in ways that I will never be able to fully comprehend or express in words, other than a very heartfelt feeling of gratitude for your leadership, taking a stand when we needed leaders to take that stand. And I look back and I see so many of events that happened during the COVID era where folks were just giving up, and they were not, there wasn't very few examples of leaders that were saying, hey, this is wrong. We don't have to comply. And here's this pastor just like out of nowhere, that get out really impacted me in ways that brought me to my faith. And I haven't said this before, but watching your video, that really changed my life. I then started looking at God as a solution, as an answer to all of all of the events that were happening in Canada and around the world. And little did I know that your Get Out video would challenge me as a man to my core, to a point where I ended up getting baptized in a horse trough a couple of months after your Get Out video went viral. And that event in my life is something that I'm going to try my best in my book to talk about how I found my faith, and a faith in a horse trough with another pastor that had made a stand, kept his church open in Rimbey, Alberta. Super amazing, good guy. And to be in that water and coming out of the water with a vision of filling Ottawa with semis right there on the spot, get dunked in the water, and then the first vision that's flooded through me is a vision of filling Ottawa with semis and the words Freedom Convoy. And I don't know how to describe this event. People think I'm crazy. There's those that believe, have words of what I experienced, but I know in my heart that this is something at my age I'd never experienced before or felt before, and still to this day have a hard time describing the raw, real, powerful connection that I felt with God. It's like he just came through me, and I broke down in tears right there in the spot, cried for a good 2-3 minutes, and I was surrounded by amazing good people that witnessed this whole thing. And from there, that was in April of 2021, where the words Freedom Convoy were given to me by God. And I've always said from day one, I testified about this, is that this wasn't a people's convoy. This was God's convoy. God was waking us up, calling each of us to stand up and fight the evil that we've experienced in this world. And COVID was a pure example of letting the devil get the better of a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey, to say the least, how a couple of ripples thrown into the pond can have a massive tidal wave effects around the world. And I'm still in that battle as you are, Art, as you are, Brad. And I know others that have stood up against, governments especially our Canadian government, which, growing up, I was under the impression that we were free and we had all these rights. And I was all proud of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the very first sentence that I never really looked at before, which was under the supremacy of God and the rule of law.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me. I was like, how special are we as Canadians to have such an amazing document where God is the first and the rule of law is second. And then you get into reality and you see things aren't lining up with God, and they're not lining up with the rule of law, and something in your gut when you see a pastor being ripped apart and dragged into handcuffs for standing up for God and standing up for the rule of law, it has lasting impacts on people like myself, which is, I'm just a truck driver at the end of the day, nobody special. I certainly never in a million years would have seen myself on this path that I'm on right now, where I'm still fighting against a Canadian judicial system, and I will never stop fighting, because I see the light of truth that comes from being vindicated. And that's what I'm really seeking, is vindication more than anything. Under God's divine calling is to seek vindication. And it's been a journey.
Yeah, it's incredible. So many people, in a way, what happened to us globally forced the people to either go away, further away from God, but there's also millions of people that, because of what was done to them, they came closer to God. And that's incredible. In the end of the day, we always have a choice. We can be destroyed by what evil is doing to us, or we can be elevated. In the Bible, it's very clear. It says what enemy meant for evil, God used for good. So all those crazy things that we faced, the arrest, what they've done to me after the highway arrest, they tortured me. Police officers were not nice. I was transported upside down like a piece of meat, with my face on the ground and my feet sticking to the roof. 3 days and 2 nights on concrete. Every 30 minutes, officer would come and bang on the doors to make sure we're not sleeping. But in the end of the day, God knows what he's doing if we keep faith, if we stay faithful. So I want to encourage all those people that are facing still the craziness and challenges and difficulties. Don't give up, and definitely do not give up on God. God loves you. He died for you, and he rose from the grave for you. And he's sitting on the right hand of God Almighty. And when people come to me and say, why would God do this? Why would God allow this? Well, listen, God has nothing to do with the crooked government. Crooked people are crooked because they have chosen to be evil, wicked. God hates corruption. He hates evil. But we have a choice. And, I want to encourage you, choose what's good. Choose what's good. And even if it costs you, I knew that they are going to come for me. I knew it. I knew that I will pay dearly for standing up. But you know what? When I look back, I don't regret a thing. I don't regret a thing. Yeah, it was crazy. It was hard. It's still hard. I'm still in court. Today, I received an email from my lawyer that I'm going to be interrogated by Alberta Health Services in June. In June, they're going
pedophiles these are criminal pedophiles at Alberta Health Services. I just want to expand this one because this is a shock to me. For the world audience here, Pastor Artur, there are members of Alberta Health Services who have been criminally indicted and spent time in jail as pedophiles, who are at the head of Alberta Health Service, hired on by the Premier, the CEO of Alberta Corporation, Danielle Smith. And this is what Pastor Artur is saying. He was just notified of that the members of Alberta Health Services, maybe some of those, the already criminally convicted pedophiles, true fact, not conspiracy,
Yeah.
may want to interrogate you. This is literal fact, ladies and gentlemen around the world.
Yeah,
Please
not May. It's already confirmed. I am to be interrogated with my brother David about what happened. So 2 days, it's already scheduled, and we have to go through this ordeal. And I'm not afraid. I will do what God called me to do, and I believe that it's time to expose those people. So I'm looking forward to it. But I wanted to throw this in for the people to understand that the fight continues. This is not over. We are still in the trenches. We're still fighting. We still are lawyered up. And when I go to court, which I go to court regularly right now, we just received $600 tickets from the city of Calgary for uh, it's insane. So we feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary, and when we show up at the location, the garbage, the needles, drugs are all over the place. So our volunteers sometimes take an hour to clean the sidewalks and the places where the criminals are selling and using drugs. So we have garbage bags filled with their garbage, and we put the garbage next to the garbage bin, the city garbage bin, and we just got $600 tickets for doing it, for putting garbage where the garbage belongs, because there are Muslims and they hate us. Those bylaw services and those peace so-called peace officers. So we just got targeted yesterday by Muslims in uniforms, and we have to go back to court. So it looks like for me it's a never-ending story, never-ending ordeal of me being with lawyers and in court. But I want the people to know that no matter what they throw at us, good men, if you are a good man will stand up and do what good men are required to do. And that's why I titled my book, Lions Do Not Bow. Lions do not bow. We don't bow before hyenas. Yeah, we can be overtaken by the hyenas. We can be overpowered by the sheer number of wickedness, but we don't bow. We don't make, if you're a good man, you don't make pacts with the hyenas. You don't make deals with evil. You don't partner with evil. You expose evil. And that's what, Brad, you have been doing since I know you for years, faithfully, week after week. And James, oh, there you go. Praise God. You see, I love that. I love
never
to
give
do
up, never give up, and get out, demon.
right. That's the thing. I mean, folks, you are witnessing that you gotta be stubborn like a donkey. I always say, that I'm probably a combination of all the donkeys together. I mean, all the combined in one, because God gave me this stubbornness that erupts the people in a very wrong way. But I was wired that way. I was,
Polish lion pastor.
so we have to keep doing what God called us to do, and never quit, never give up. In the end of the day, we only lose when we throw a towel. We don't lose when we keep plowing for righteousness' sake. And what a crazy season we are witnessing in our lives. But you were mentioning Daniel Smith, and I'll tell you some cool stuff later on, when James is going to be able to to tell us what's happening in his life. Where is he at now? I mean, we know, but I think a lot of people don't know what's happening to him, really. And then I'll tell you what I witnessed in Ottawa, and what those foolish so-called Christian leaders are planning to do against the C9, the bill C9. And when I heard that, first of all, I had very ungodly thoughts. Okay. I had very ungodly thoughts. I'm like, God. And then I wanted to climb a table and yell and scream at them, but I didn't do it. I'm still kind of semi-civilized, so I didn't do it. But I'll tell you what I've heard from the leadership of the churches in Canada. It's insanity.
Please do. James.
Well, this whole never give up and keep fighting is, we're all called upon in different forms, different ways in our lifetime. Sometimes you have no choice. Your back is against the wall. And when I look back at Ottawa and being arrested in correlation to the invocation of the Emergency Act, and obviously my role in the Freedom Convoy, I would never have in a million years, back then, imagine that I'd have 7 lawyers. And had I given up, had I did what others do and what was expected of me, then November of last year, I would have been in Ottawa and I would have had to attend a trial. But prior to that, a whole year earlier in 2024, my lawyers came to me and said, James, you're going to go to jail. And it's not going to be house arrest. It's not going to be a walk in a park. You're going to be going and doing some hard jail. And in my mind, the closest that I could recall of what jail would look like would be what you had to go through, because I followed your story, Artur, and it was like, there's no darn way I'm going to go sit in a jail and be silenced and be a trophy on the Crown's mantle. What are my options? So I started praying to God. Again, the power of prayer, folks. If you ever question it and you ever need, a little faith, I've got lots and lots of faith to spare and testimonials on testimonials to provide, where the power of prayer has been answered repeatedly over and over and over since I got out of that horse trough. And I got all this news from lawyers. You're going to go to jail. We're giving you 1 year's notice. And a movie came on that changed the things. I watched on Netflix Edward Snowden. And for those that don't know about Edward Snowden, he worked for the government and he had some evidence, and he decided to become a whistleblower, and he filed, he fled USA and filed for political asylum. And I was like, why am I watching this movie just right after the lawyers told me I'm going to be going to jail? That's a pretty big clue. So I started researching political asylum, and then from there got back on the phone with lawyers, and everything else changed to a point where it was like, okay, I'm the last trucker standing for a good reason. I've got the last trial of the entire Freedom Convoy case files of 272 different court cases. I'm the last one standing. And here's this solution called political asylum. And as a Canadian, it's hard to grasp, we're supposed to be free. But when you start looking at all of your brothers and sisters that have been through the court systems prior and have been politically persecuted, extreme lawfare, some cases of solitary confinement in jail, mass majority have gotten criminal records, have had to endure months and months of, paying for lawyers, and just, it's been a nightmare for so many individuals. So coming to USA and filing for political asylum is my David versus Goliath. I'm still throwing rocks. I'm still standing. I'm still fighting, because I know that how this is going to play out in the future is that once I do get my court hearing inside the USA, it's going to change the entire roadmap for the judicial system in Canada that they've been using, the narrative they've been spreading. And, it's going to be worth the fight and worth the sacrifices that God has called upon me to make. Understand, folks, I've lost my country. I've lost my home. This has cost me my marriage. I do not have the ability of working since April of 2025. I've not been able to legally work. I've been living in exile by myself in solitary confinement, per se, with only me and God and my dogs and my faith and lawyers and a reverse lawfare strategy that is being well executed and implemented. And it's going to, like I said, it will have serious consequences in the future that the government of Canada, the Crown Attorney, the Attorney Generals are going to have to be held accountable for their actions and their crimes against myself, as well as whoever had to go through being arrested, had their bank account seized as a result of the invocation of the Emergency Act. And here's something that folks need to understand is that when the Emergency Act was unlawfully and justifiably invoked, it went through a public commission's inquiry, which I testified in, and I was asked, how this all started, and I made a very clear point of reference that God started this convoy and that this was God's movement, and we should be calling upon God to come to the court because clearly under the Charter of Rights, it's under the supremacy of God and the rule of law, and this monkey court is not complying, and nor do our politicians. They didn't like that at all. Oh boy, they did not like that one bit, but I held my ground. And from there, I seen how courts were ruling. And when Judge Mosley ruled against the government, and he stood up on the right side of law, finding that our rights were violated, that Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland and Bill Blair and Menchino never had they violated our rights. They didn't have justification to put that Emergency Act on, which had never been used on Canadians before. Okay. Well, what should have happened when that verdict was released publicly? And this is where it gets to be a real interesting legal case here in USA with strong evidence, is that the Crown Attorneys of Ottawa and the Attorney General should have adjourned any case, any file that was attached with criminal proceedings and or court proceedings, a result of their findings of a judge ruling that these emergency action have been used, because there was 272 folks that got arrested in the red zone as a result of the Emergency Act. I'm the last one that got arrested. So this becomes really interesting when it all plays out down the road in a real court with real cameras, with powerful lawyers that I have representing me that took months and months preparing all of the evidence, affidavits. Pastor Artur, your affidavit is inside a piece of legal history for life. Okay. This political asylum application goes down in the legal history books. It's a one of a kind. And being represented by some of the very best lawyers between Canada and USA. One of my lawyers, I have no problems mentioning his name. It's Peter Tinkton. He's the main lawyer that President Trump has been using with respects to political persecution and lawfare against him. Well, Peter Tinkton and President Trump, they go back years and years to when they were in military school together. And Trump went one way in business and Peter Tinkton went the other way in law. And now whenever Peter shows up in court, law professors show up, law students show up, and every single mainstream camera shows up in that courtroom with Peter, because he puts on a master class of law, and he is amazing. He has a legal brain that just others really pay attention to what type of cases he takes on. So for him to be my personal lawyer of that caliber, standing up and saying, James has been brutalized with extreme lawfare, extreme political persecution, extreme political prosecution, has had immense harms committed against me as a result of the EA being used, as a result of how the Crown attorneys and the attorney generals have handled this file. And should I be returned to Canada, what harms would I face? Well, right now, folks, I have a nationwide warrant for my arrest because I refuse to comply to a judge's request for me to come to Ottawa to answer to the judge why I would not be appearing in person for my November 10th trial when I'd already filed for political asylum. And that created another wave of evidence of more example of just how absolute insanity our judges and our judicial system is. Yeah. So they didn't like the answer. So they're just like, well, we don't agree with James's position. He has no evidence to support the reasoning for political asylum. Well, guess what? My lawyers testified to this. The judge wouldn't even hear any evidence. He just made an assumption.
Yeah.
And the lawyers caught this very, very quickly. So I got a nationwide warrant for failure to appear, added on top of 5 other charges that are very severe. 2 of them, when I made my first court appearance back in 2022, the Crown attorney that was residing over my file said, oh, we've got James here and we've got all this evidence that links you from April, August, from August, September, October, November, December, 5 months of me coordinating, strategizing, and really working with national groups Canada-wide, putting together the backbone of the Freedom Convoy prior to anybody even knowing about it. But here's something that Pastor O'Toole, you're going to really enjoy, is that I held a permit that has never been achieved before at the Parliament. This is a first of a kind permit. And I'm the permit holder for the Freedom Convoy, where we put for all faiths, all denominations, all creeds, all relation, anybody, for everybody, a 6-month standing church on the hill.
Yeah.
Wow.
Piece of history that once we're in Ottawa, they canceled the permit. But we had that permit, giving us the religious authority and rights to be there and pray about the mandates and the overreach that the government was doing and bring people of faith together. Nobody's ever done that type of permit before. And we did. We asked pastors all over, would you please come to Ottawa and pray on Parliament Hill and lead us in prayer? So that's a little piece of history that goes down in the evidence file. So there's a lot of evidence, folks, a lot of evidence that I'm sitting on that the government of Canada does not want to get released publicly, period, full stop. They're doing everything in their power to avoid accountability. We have now Mark Carney, who has instructed his attorney general to appeal the second court ruling finding the Emergency Act unjustified. And we're waiting to see if the Supreme Court will proceed forward with letting that case go to the final level. However, at the same time, we have the Privy Council intentionally deleting records that have to do with the Emergency Act.
Yeah.
So this is going on in real time right now. They're deleting records that have to do with the Emergency Act. So the government doesn't want to be held accountable. There's one trucker and one legal case that changes all that because of testimonies, because of affidavits, because of videos, because of hard evidence that links it all together with real cameras, real lawyers that are outside of the Canadian judicial system that they cannot control. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm taking this fight. That's what God has called upon me to do. I wish it wasn't me. So help me God. There's days that I struggle with all this because I like I said, I've given up so much, but I refuse to quit because I did start something. I started becoming a servant of God in that horse trough, not a leader of a convoy. I was just being a servant, and I will remain a servant till the last breath in me.
Yeah. By the way, if you need my testimony in United States, do not hesitate. Let the lawyers know. I would come and I would testify what happened here, what they have done, and again, I have been ticketed over 365 tickets, over 120 court cases, and many arrests, and not just me. My brother David was arrested 13 times, and our son Nathaniel, to this day, James, Brad knows that, but to this day, every time our son, our oldest son, crosses the border, he gets arrested. That would be his 20th arrest. Every single time he's detained, let go after, but he gets arrested every single time he crosses the border to this day. So that's years are passing, but they went not just after us, they went after our children, they went after our churches. As you know, they lit my house on fire, they lit the church on fire, they tried to assassinate me multiple times. And as you know, James, I have become the first Canadian in a history of this country to be charged with terrorism for a sermon. And your story reminds me, what the Crown Prosecutor said regarding your story. It reminds me what that snake, Stephen Johnston, was saying to the judge when I was kept in metal cages in Remand Center in Calgary, solitary confinement, concrete cells, no water, no washroom, and then stripped naked in metal cages, capped multiple times. And he said to the judge, Your Honor, this is extremely dangerous man. He caused Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages. And if he's released, it's going to be very bad for the Canadian people. This is going to be very dangerous. They charged me with terrorism, and the judge convicted me of terrorism. And a month after they took me through the ringer, kept me in metal cages, solitary confinement, they withdraw the terrorism charge and kept the mischief over 5,000. Those people, those gangsters in uniform, those mafia people called crown prosecutors, judges, and politicians, they play a game. It's just a wicked game for those people. And if you need a testimony, I can get you more testimonies for your lawyers. And I would consider this an honor to come and testify in the United States of America about what the Canadian government has done to their people and, of course, to their clergy. So if you need something like this, let me know, and I'll gladly fly over there and tell the people tell the judges the truth. So we still fight, and in a way, we are in a very similar situation because I filed with my brother David a lawsuit against the Canadian government, and we are actually suing Attorney General. We are suing RCMP. We are suing Alberta Health Services for kidnapping me and keeping me not only in metal cages, but I spent a week in a psych ward, as you remember, without evaluation from the doctors, completely illegally. I mean, imagine a sane person being kidnapped by sheriffs, shackled like an animal, put in a metal cage. I was transferred in a metal cage and then taken to a psych ward. So we're going after those people. We're suing City of Calgary. We're suing prison for what they've done. We are going after the chief of police. So, but why? People might ask, why you're doing this? It costs a fortune. It costs a fortune. I mean, my biggest amount of raising funds right now is telling people I need help to keep the lawyers fighting. I need support. When I do shows, I tell people I'm still in the trenches. We're still fighting, but we need the Canadian support. We need the world support, people that believe in justice. But the question is, why are we doing this? Why Brad is still doing what he's doing in exile as well? I mean, Brad, you're living in exile, and then now James, we have another a patriot, a lover of Canada in exile, while the good people are being replaced with the haters of Canada, haters of what's good, people that are refusing to work hard and they're draining the system. And I'm in the courts, but why? And I want to tell the people why. Because we believe in justice. And until those people are not held accountable, we cannot move on and we cannot talk about justice. Justice demands retribution. Justice demands a closure. And justice demands that those that broke the law, those that have done this to us, are held responsible, at least exposed. The people deserve to know who did this to us and why it was done to us. So that's why I'm doing, that's why we're proceeding, even though we cannot really afford the legal fees, but we're still doing it. And sometimes I'll put it on my credit card, trusting and believing that God knows what He is doing, and eventually He's going to give us this ability to keep going and paying the bills. But I believe that Canadian people deserve to know who did this to them, why it was done to them. And Canadian people deserve, our children deserve, that their fathers would stand up against this evil, this wickedness, and bring accountability and checks and balances back to our court system, back to our media, back to our political realm, because we have been betrayed. And I know that some people will not like what I'm going to say, but the reality, the truth is, in front of your eyes, we were betrayed, and we are still being betrayed by all the levels of government and all the political parties in power. We were betrayed by the liberal government. We were betrayed by the conservative government. We were betrayed by the NDP. I always say to the people, when they say, oh no, conservatives are the best and this, and Pierre Poilievre is the savior of Canada. Listen, where was Pierre Poilievre when James was bleeding, literally bleeding in the middle of our streets, fighting for our rights? Where was the Conservative Party? Where were the members of Parliament when the truckers were illegally arrested? Where was Pierre Poilievre when they were arresting pastors, when I was in the middle of the highway? Where were my members of Parliament? They were nowhere to be found, because they are not real. They're fake. They're traitors to the Canadian people. And the sooner people realize, the sooner Christians realize that those people have not represented us, they are still not representing us. It's, James, well, I don't know how many times you were arrested. I'm a little bit I'm a little bit as an expert now if it comes to being arrested. So I have seen this game multiple times, the good cop and the bad cop. You know, when you watch Hollywood movies, there's always the good cop and the bad cop. And I want to yell and scream to the Canadian people, they're all bad cops working for the same police department. It's a game, it's a theater. So we have to understand that those parties, the good cop and the bad cop, the liberals and the conservatives and the NDP, they all are working for the same crown corporation. And they all did this to us. So you have to understand, the sooner we understand that we were betrayed politically, the sooner we will start voting for different people. And quite often, I kind of joke here, but quite often I'll say from the pulpit, if I had a choice to vote for traitors from all those parties or for my dog would get a vote. Not because my dog is super smart, but at least my dog doesn't want to hurt you. You feed my dog, and that's it. And he's a happy camper. We keep feeding the monsters in Ottawa, and they want more and more and more. Those beasts, those monsters are never satisfied. I was just in Ottawa. I just flew a couple days ago from the House of Commons. So I was there when they were passing the C9.
No.
C9 is directed at freedom of expression, freedom of religion. They spin it the way they want to spin it, but the truth is, this is another form of persecution. Bill C9 and other bills as well. When I was there, I was listening to the debate about the bill C8, which is the cybersecurity bill as well, which is going to infringe on our rights as well. But going back to Ottawa, it's absolutely insane how church has fallen, because the leaders in the church, during the meeting I was there for 2 days, they announced that they're going to bring to the aid. Brad, you're going to fall from your chair. Okay, I hope you grab yourself, because you will be shaken at this moment. Okay, it's an earthquake. The church leaders announced publicly that they are working with a person that is going to save Canada, the person that will save us, and they are bringing that person to the church for that person to fight for our rights. And that person is, are you ready? Daniel Smith.
Wow. So the one who is pushing MAID, euthanasia, where they have murdered, by their own reports in Canada, nearly 80,000 Canadians. They stopped reporting in October 2024. By that time, it was 74,654 have been executed by MAID in the hospitals across Canada. She's pushing it. She has pushed Dr. William Mackis down to Florida, threatened his family. She has allowed actual criminally prosecuted pedophiles to rejoin and be employed at Alberta Health Services. And she is the one that also allowed you and the Coots Four to languish in prison, as well as the RCMP, which has all been verified, everybody, in court filings and FOIA requests that set up the Coots Four during the Freedom Convoy, which is where Pastor Arthur was giving the Lord's Supper, praying, and then providing a sermon at the Coots-Alberta border crossing into Montana during Freedom Convoy. And then that's when this man was arrested, taken down, and charged criminally with domestic terrorism, the first ever in the province of Alberta. And Danielle Smith, the CEO of the Alberta Corporation, allowed that. And now what you're saying, Pastor Arthur, is that this demon, this psycho, absolute psycho, that is satanic, what is being allowed to go forward and to propagate, is the one that the churches are bringing forward to save them. To me, that's just like saying, let's go bring the devil in here to save us all.
Yeah.
100%.
Can I weigh in on this?
Sure.
Our churches have not learned. They have not learned anything with respects to what happened during COVID and the calling of, where is your faith? This is what really got under my skin back then was very few real pastors were preaching to their flocks. It's like, let's follow the government. Let's do what the government tells us to do so that we can continue with our corporate non-for-profit financial statuses and protect our financial statuses for our churches. And the hypocrisy is what I see in all of this, is that there is so many churches and so many church-going people that are living a lie, that are hypocritical, and the church body as a whole has just completely become one big hypocrisy. And it's disgusting. It needs to be called out. And if you're a real Christian, you do not need to go to a church to support the hypocrisy. You need to have a relationship with God, full stop, under the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That's it right there in a nutshell. And your faith should be very, very clear that God will provide. If you pray, God answers you. So where was all the praying going on to protect church-going folks? And here we have more examples of tyranny happening. We have more examples of how the government is increasing its agendas to completely control the population of Canada. And where are the churches? Where are the church leaders? They're like, I'd like to see them.
Yeah, they're in bed with the people like Pierre Poilievre and Smith. I played in Ottawa to those so-called leaders. I played the video of Pierre Poilievre talking about abortion. I don't know if you guys have an opportunity to watch it, but it's absolutely sickening. He says, "I guarantee you, when I'm going to be the prime minister, that we will," I'll paraphrase, that we will keep slaughtering children up to 9 months. There will be absolutely no protection of children, no legislation, nothing up to 9 months. He says, "I guarantee you that women will have the right to do whatever they want to do it with their bodies." And he says, "I guarantee you this when I'm going to be the prime minister." And yet the Christians, so-called Christians, want to vote for this guy. And they did vote for him when he was running last year to get his seat at the House of Commons. Also, it's quite a fascinating thing if it comes to Daniel Smith, because Daniel Smith came right after Jason Kenney, that locked us up like animals for having church services. And yet it was Jason Kenney, the premier of Alberta, that partied at the Sky Palace with his ministers, drinking whiskey, having a great time, while at the same time we pastors were arrested for just having a church service. When Daniel Smith was running to replace that demon, Jason Kenney, she says, "I promise you, if you elect me, I'll bring checks and balances, accountability. There will be she said, "I'm going to bring an amnesty bill. So every person, pastors, anyone that was subjected to the COVID tyranny, the mandates, the craziness, it will be pardoned. I promise you, I guarantee you that I'm going to bring the amnesty bill." Also, she said publicly on television, she's going to reimburse the pastors for what happened to them. Nothing happened. She never kept his word. She's a pathological liar. She's a demon, just like Brad said, walking around just me, whatever she wants. And yet the church in Ottawa right now, I just could not believe it, my ears, is bringing, just like you said, Brad, a demon into the church, believing that this individual is going to save the country. So I'll tell you what I believe is happening. I believe that she is positioning herself to run for the federal office. I think she just took being a premier as just a stepping stone to what she really wants. I believe that she wants to be the prime minister. She is propagating right now on her social networks I mean, the algorithms, they're calling her the Iron Lady of Alberta, like comparing her to Margaret Thatcher. She is positioning herself into a position to take over the federal Conservative Party. And the stupid, brainless churchgoers and the church leaders are embracing that and are enabling this pathological liar. And there's so much more, Brad. She is still jabbing children 3 months young, even though 2 years the doctors have given her a report that the jobs are hurting children and elderly. Those doctors said to her,
Archer, the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, passed it and said unequivocally, with all of the proof, that the COVID-19 vaccines are biological, radiological, chemical, and neurological weapons of mass destruction. And that was brought forward. That's been passed. That's also in international law, and it's been proven elsewhere. So we have the largest genocide on the planet of our time via those jabs, which are still being administered to children today under the reign of Danielle Smith, all the other premiers, all the other, even governors still in the states that haven't turned yet or haven't been taken out from a lawful standpoint, being arrested and then had their war crime tribunals, because these are war crimes which are going on. She is propagating that.
Yes.
And those people who are supporting a war criminal are very much themselves war criminals.
Yes.
Because there's a U.S. code, which is also an international ubiquitous code, that if you are complicit in supporting a war crime, which is ongoing, and you have not reported that, and you are propagating that war crime by supporting it publicly, even nowadays through social media, you yourself are culpable for that war crime. You might not face the death sentence justice for war crimes, but you could face life in prison. So when you're looking at a Pierre Poilievre who in 2016 voted on bestiality, the very first bill that Pierre Trudeau passed as the prime minister, the selected prime minister via Dominion voting systems, Pierre Poilievre, Conservatives, voted on that. Make bestiality legal. We want to have men have sex with dogs, and then those dogs that they have sex with, women can have sex with them too. Federally, that's allowed. Then we wanted euthanize people, was the second thing they did with the medical assistance in death program, where they have now executed 8 times the amount of the people who were euthanized in the Nazi government in the 1930s in Germany. We're not talking concentration camps. We're talking about euthanasia, death by lethal injection in hospitals of Germans who stood up to stand up, to fight back, who dissented, which Bill C-9 now allows for Canadians who have anything that's arbitrarily, as James, you just put out here earlier today, or last night rather, Bill C-9, it's so loose in the language, it's like the United Kingdom. They can come into you, say this was social media, this is hate speech, 2 years immediate jail sentence. And just like Norman Traversy will be on live tonight on Scott McKay's show and Patriot Street Fighter. And by the way, everybody, Scott McKay is going to have Pastor Arthur Pawlowski back on. He just texted me here moments ago. So we're going to also get this story out again to the American Patriot audience, that they arrested Norman, 5 cops on Saturday in Ottawa, and they tried to force vaccinate him multiple times at Ottawa General Hospital. And it was only because Norman stood and said, in solitary confinement for 7.5 hours, a 70-year-old man who is living on the streets of Ottawa at the grace of the Swiss Hotel, but he has no home anymore, no bank accounts. He has all of everything that he owns in a Food City Loblaws bag, a plastic bag. That's all he has right now, and the clothes off his back. 7.5 hours solitary confinement. They tried to force vaccinate him, and he said, "This is Nuremberg code. I have denied this. I am not going to take your vaccines, any jabs, any biologics inserted into my body, or any battery of medical tests." By the grace of God, they released him because he stood his ground. But this is still happening right now against the children, the babies, the euthanasia program, and the fact that they're bringing in 60 million more immigrants from India alone to invade the borders and to take the land grab of Canadians. It's just all there. And you have CSIS and the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and other U.S. governmental agencies who have continued to call out, even as late as last Wednesday, March 25th, 2026, that Canada is harboring terrorists, supporting terrorist networks, and they just had to sanction a company in Vancouver, British Columbia, for funneling over $100 million to the Hezbollah and the Hamas. That was the United States doing that here. We haven't even talked about Picton Pig Farm, which is just outside of Vancouver, BC, which is the largest child trafficking and human trafficking operation in Canadian history, on the level of Epstein Island. That's still all got to come out, because you have politicians, business owners, entertainers, entrepreneurs, even so-called previous American royalty, political royalty, and Hollywood royalty that were there, that took place in massive war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes against children, and bestiality and the nasty. And all those tapes will eventually be coming out. That's next year, from what I've been told, at some of the top levels of the American government and some of the people that we have all mingled with who are in the background of the Freedom and the Patriot movement. So folks, we are talking about the fact that it is off the chain. This is the Venezuela, Iran regime, and the Cuban regime, which still has Canadians by a stranglehold. And they're sitting here with Operation Mockingbird media. They're sitting here with the jabs, the chemtrails. They're poisoning your food. They're genetically modifying pigs, cows, you name it. And they're taxing and enslaving everybody to death. And those who are still funding the taxpayers, those are going directly to murdering your children. Those are going directly to putting free coke, fentanyl, and methamphetamines on the streets of Vancouver. Just today, TELUS Mobile Vaccination Center and a TELUS Mobile Health Center is on Hastings Street in Vancouver, giving out free opioids. Not a doctor there to write a prescription, not a nurse there to write a prescription, a nurse practitioner and 2 TELUS employees. That's like having Verizon drive a Verizon truck to anywhere in the United States and say that we will give you free opioids. And just go ahead. Here you are, a little fentanyl for you. No problem. Take some home to your little child.
Yeah.
That continues to happen today. Over to you, gentlemen.
On that topic, Brad, people have to understand, those that have never read my book. Again, Lions Do Not Bow, Amazon.ca, Amazon.com. But if you have not have a chance to read my book, I'm here to tell you that every inmate in prison, so when I was imprisoned, in the morning and in the afternoon, we were offered every single day 5 different highly addictive narcotics: fentanyl, cocaine, and other things. 5 highly addictive narcotics are given to every inmate twice a day, every single day. And when I watched, movies from Hollywood, I always had this, because I'm joking right now, when I say I'm a little bit of an expert if it comes to prison and arrest because of what they have done to me. But I have never spent time before I became a pastor in prison. So I'm learning as I'm going. And I thought that drugs are being smuggled to prison by other prisoners right here and there. I was so naive. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand that the drugs are not being smuggled to prison. They are being brought to prison by guards and nurses every single day. Those people are being dragged. I work with the homeless people on the streets of Calgary, and guys, thousands of homeless people were murdered by the Canadian government. Thousands murdered. Every day we have agents of the government giving free fentanyl to the homeless people. Let this sink in. Every day, government send agents that distribute fentanyl to the homeless people because they want the homeless to die. That's their way of cleaning the problem. So people are dying. They're dying. They're like, I'm sure you have seen the zombies. They call them the zombies. They, broken bodies. They can't stand up. We have this everywhere on the streets of our cities because I work with the homeless people, including today. We've seen people that were completely destroyed, and we have overdoses on a regular basis because the government agents are supplying for free fentanyl to the homeless people. And of course, the fentanyl, just like the President United States of America, Donald J. Trump, is, exposing, stating it's coming from China through the Vancouver ports to America, to Canada, and is being distributed by the Canadian agents. So those things are real. And if it comes to Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, you have to understand, 2 years she is sitting on a doctor's report that clearly multiple doctors told her this is hurting children, this is hurting our elderly, this is killing. Those shots are killing your people. And you would think that any decent human being would say, we have to stop this, and we have to stop this immediately. No. In Calgary, Alberta, you go to a mall. Listen to this. This is what's happening. You can go to mall with your children, and in mall, you can job yourself and your children. 3 months young, and 6 months young. They recommend now the jobs every 3 months. Can you believe it? Every 3 months, they are recommending people to take this injection. I think the babies are 6 months. If I remember correctly, it's 6 months and up every 3 months. So now they're jobbing children on a regular basis every 3 months with this experimental drug. Children are dropping dead. Children are getting sick. People are dying. As a pastor, I deal with lots of tragedies. I'm telling you, people are dropping dead. People are getting sicker and sicker, especially those that keep injecting that poison into the body. We are talking about monsters. Those are not human beings anymore. Those are monsters. Those are beasts working for Satan. So we are in the deep trouble. But I agree with James that the church is almost completely dead, and the church leaders, maybe not willfully, many of them, maybe they just don't know any better. Maybe money and comfort is more important to them than the truth. But the church, in a global church, Canada's church, is almost completely dead. And they are now thinking of partnering with a beast, with a monster from Alberta, to save Canadians, to save the church. And I'm sitting there, I'm listening. I turned to my friend. I said, "Are you hearing what I'm hearing? Because this is insane. This is a total insanity." And she says, "I know, this is insane. What those people are doing is evil. It's evil, but they're doing it." So I would not be surprised if Pierre Poilievre wins, because they are continuing this betrayal. People have to understand that the Conservative Party, it's the Conservatives that signed us into the WEF. It was not the Liberals. You have to understand it was Stephen Harper that brought WEF, which is World Economic Forum, which under that umbrella, millions of Canadians were hurt. Millions of Canadians were hurt because of what the Conservative government did, not the Liberal government, Conservative government. Then your savior of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, is the same one that signed us into the Paris Accord, the climate accord. It was Pierre Poilievre that did it as a minister and brought the carbon tax into Canada and all that garbage, that big fat climate lie. And yet they are viewing those people as saviors. And I'm telling you, gentlemen, sometimes I have a hard time to articulate my frustration with the Canadian people, and especially the churchgoers. Why can't you see it? Why I, an immigrant with a broken English, can get it and you can't? That's my question to the Canadian people and the churches. And the only answer I can have for that is that they have sold the truth for comfort, that the churches and the Christians and the pastors have willfully betrayed Jesus like Judas Iscariot for a silver coin. Yes. In other words, they prefer the restaurants, they prefer hockeys, they prefer golfing, and they want to keep it at all costs, that the truth is being pushed as a secondary thing. Faith is pushed as something like an addition, not the core of the foundation of our lives. And what that tells me, guys, is that we are heading for a second test. I always said it. I said it for years that the COVID era was a test. God was testing the church. He was testing our humanity. Out of the COVID era, we could clearly see who is who in the zoo, who is a beast, who is a sheep, who is a goat, who is a wolf, who is a human and who is just a psychopath. We could see clearly. But I believe that the second test is coming. I believe that God, because of his mercy, is going to allow us to go through the second test. And he's watching and he's hoping, like I'm hoping, that we will pass the second test, because if we will not, I think we're going to lose our country. Canadians are heading for an economical disaster. I believe that the second test is attached to finances. I believe that Canadians are going to lose properties. They're going to lose their houses. They're going to lose their perks. In other words, they're going to lose the very thing that they took when they were selling Jesus, God, and faith and neighbors. They're going to lose that silver coin, and they are not going to be able to spend it. So, I would say to the Canadian people, brace yourself for impact, because you are about to be touched in a very powerful way. And only the people like James and Brad and others that are actually standing with the truth, willing to pay the price for the truth, are close to God, are going to be protected. I believe we're heading into a scenario of Joseph, the famine, and the Goshen. I believe that those that were faithful are going to be protected by God, and kind of like a individual Goshen. Goshen, for those that do not know the Bible, is a place where Israelites in Egypt were protected, where they were flourishing and they were well taken care of. And the rest of the country, I think it's going to be a disaster after disaster after disaster. And rightfully so. I think we as a society deserve this flipping of the tables, because look at us. Brad talked about abortion, maid, drugs, corruption, no accountability, crooked judges, crooked crown prosecutors, crooked law enforcement agencies. I mean, the list, teachers that no longer teach our children, but willfully indoctrinate our children, economy, banking system, everything is crumbling in front of our very eyes. And I think that God is going to allow circumstances to come to us so we would, in a way, when you're hurting, you look up, you're seeking God. And I think God is bringing a season in Canada where people are going to be hurting, not to be destroyed, but to realize we have walked away from God and it's time to look up.
Yeah, most agreed. And there are the few as well, Pastor Archer, that are standing up and taking measures and means in their own hands. Like we have the Republic of Alberta Independence Movement that's actually also on our thumbnail, because they're sitting here going, we will have a sovereign nation, a constitutional republic, Jeffrey Rath, Mr. Wilson, the others on here. Oh, look at that, just getting hit right now. Isn't that so surprising? How they like to hit the internet when we're talking about this and an independence and a freedom movement, because those people who are still here, who stood up for the Freedom Convoy, who stood up and either prayed in churches by themselves at home or joined and went outside the community, maybe over to a horse trough to get baptized like James Bauder. This is where we are now today, because there is a subset of the awake men and women across Canada, other nations as well, Australia, New Zealand, working on their own things, Sweden and South Africa. I was just on calls with them last week too, and other ones tomorrow that will be coming on to this show, who want to stand for values which are of divine law, and the fact that we as men and women can bond together and have community. And I acknowledge that, and I pray that that does happen, to attempt to get out of the satanic system. But we also must ensure whomever we vote for and we put in there to be a representation for us are themselves godly men and women. And that's what's on our thumbnail too, for everybody to see. Enemies of the state, men of God. These two men of God, these men, James Bauder and Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, his entire family, that extends to his brother and his parents, his father. I got to meet them a few months ago as well in Calgary and attend street church services. This is what they want to stop. And what is the most threat? Our words, our heart, and our prayers. That is the greatest threat to the demons right now.
Yeah.
I have to chime in here on the Alberta independence movement as an Albertan. And Arturo, you're an Albertan, and Brad.
Yep.
Looking at World Economic Forum, looking at our political landscape, looking at the show pony politicians like Daniel Smith and Pierre Poilievre, two wings of the same bird. History repeats itself over and over and over. And then you have this little thing called the pathway of the narrow. And each of us has that choice, left or right. Follow the pathway and take the narrow path and look up and be humble, be subservient. Or you follow all of the distractions on the left and the right side of you that, distract you away from God. And you're gonna go down with a sinking ship. And myself, I've looked at the whole geopolitical aspect of Canadian politics, of global politics, and realized that other countries before Alberta have gotten divorced, and they've managed quite well. And through those times in history, you see often where people are tested and the truth has a way of coming to rise to the top. Well, I think this independence movement is going to be one of the catalysts that force people to start looking at the truth, to force people to start looking at the narratives that are being exposed on a daily basis. And that goes back into one word inside community, which is unity. If you break community apart, you got this one word, unity. And right now I'm seeing a unified front across Alberta that I have not seen in my lifetime, where patriotism within Alberta is being reborn. And it's going to be very interesting that, you talk about amnesty, Artur. I'm also in a situation where, had Premier Smith offered amnesty. I'm looking at also as a Canadian, one of my 5 charges is trying to overthrow the government and cause an insurrection. Very severe charges, just like yourself with terrorism. Where's my amnesty?
Yeah.
Where's the amnesty for the Coots boys?
Yeah.
That's never going to come to us, because there again, these politicians do not want to hold the line of truth and accountability and transparency. They cannot when there is a higher functioning government that is directly correlated to the Privy Council, that takes us over to the UK, that takes us into the World Economic Forum. And there's how this is all going to play out in the future is they've already got their rule books, their playbooks, their agendas. And if you want to know what the future is going to look like, just, look at the past. It hasn't changed because we haven't changed. But here, Alberta is making something different, a true window of hope for a change that changes everything. And I will be very, very happy come October if Albertans decide through a referendum to exit the monarch of Canada and form its own sovereign nation, and not a 51st state, but its own sovereign nation. Whereas then I can be the first Albertan to file for political asylum and come back home.
Yeah.
Literally, I will make history again, where I will have to apply to the country of Alberta, where I'm in limbo between Canada and USA, and I still have a nationwide warrant for my arrest. I still have all those criminal charges in Ottawa, in the country of Canada, but I could apply to the country of Alberta and be the first in history to have dual status, political asylum in two countries at the same time. How about those marbles?
Yeah. You know, it would be awesome. I truly believe, however, that they're not going to allow it. Just like they didn't allow Quebec to leave the Confederation, they cheated the elections. It's quite fascinating because Danielle Smith, a year ago, she said, when the movement was growing, yeah, I'm all for it. I support independence and this and this. And then on an interview, she came publicly in front of the cameras and she said, I will do everything in my power to stop it. And so I believe what is going to happen is, even if they will allow a referendum vote, even if that will happen, let's say it's going to happen, there will be enough votes, which I believe we will have enough votes. Let's say this will happen. I think they're going to cheat the election, the referendum. I truly believe they're not going to allow the separation, because Alberta, I believe, is one of the few countries with the biggest amounts of oil and other natural resources. So they need them. They need Alberta to be still the milking cow for Quebec and Ontario. As you know, James, Albertans, we don't even have to go to elections. We don't have to do any elections, because by the time we vote, it has already been decided. By the time we go to our polls, it's already done. Ontario and Quebec decides everything. We don't stand a chance. We have no voice within the Confederation, zero. So I think they will rather assassinate you than allow a referendum to succeed. That's my personal opinion. The only solution I can think that can actually work in this situation is if the movement of the independence and the referendum would bring God at the center of the movement, in the middle of the movement, which is not happening. Unfortunately, I was told even that they don't want God in the middle of this. That's why you don't see prayers. You don't see. That's why I have never been invited even to come and speak, because I was told, with me, it's too much God, it's too much Jesus, and they don't want that. So I think it's not going to succeed as much as a lot of people would love to see something like this. I believe it's not going to happen. I believe that Danielle Smith is playing what she has been doing forever, which is every 6 months, and you can test my theory. I have been observing how she operates when we were together in a Wild Rose party that she betrayed and crossed the floor and destroyed the party completely with other MLAs. But she did it as a leader of the Wild Rose party, like Judas Iscariot. So she did it then. She's doing again. Some people just don't change, and definitely she has no capacity of changing because she rejects God. But every about 6 months, what she does, she brings a good thing, a good news. She does something good, or she says something good, and then she backpedals. So, for example, just give you a few examples. She says, let's amend the Bill of Rights. Wow, that's a good thing, right? Let's have a stronger Bill of Rights. And then she inserts a Section 1. And James, you know, and I know that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is a beautiful document, but has Section 1. Therefore, it's worth less than toilet paper. I mean, literally,
Yep.
Charter of Rights and Freedoms is worth absolutely nothing in this country. It's a useless piece of paper, not even worth toilet paper. So that's what she does. But people don't know because they don't read the document. So they think, oh, she's awesome. She's for freedom. Then parental rights. She says, I will give the parents back the rights. So people say, yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. And then she overrides, she brings a clause into the parental rights bill that the doctors can override the parents. Therefore, if you got a psychopathic doctor, parents have no rights. And that's how she does. That's her pattern of saying the right things. It seems she's doing what's right, and then boom, she kills whatever she says she's trying to accomplish, fooling the people. Unfortunately, people don't know what's really going on. So I believe that if she is forced, if there will be enough people that will put their names on the referendum, she is going to cheat the outcome. I truly believe we're not going to see a success if it comes to referendum unless we have a spiritual awakening, just like you had, just like I had, just like Brad had, and other amazing patriots. Albertans need an encounter with the living God. And of course, you guys are, James, you're from Alberta. You know that Alberta used to be called the Bible Belt of Canada. For over 40 years, we Albertans had pastors as our premiers. You know, how amazing is that? Oberhart, Manning, for over 40 years, those two premiers were pastors that were preaching on Sunday to their congregants, and then during the week they were premiers. We don't have that anymore. There is a very hostile crowd that hates God and they hate Christians. And the movement to counterattack that, it has to become a movement of God. That's why I believe Donald Trump won. The MAGA movement, you're wearing the hat. It was everything from the very beginning. And I'm not going to analyze if the people that were politicians that were part of that were sincere or not. That's push that on the side. The MAGA movement was a God movement. The Freedom Convoy, James, just like you testified, was a God movement. And I saw it everywhere. I saw people doing church services. I saw singing. I saw prayers. I saw Lord's Supper on a regular basis. The Freedom Convoy movement was a God movement. And the MAGA movement in the United States was a God movement. They included pastors. They included prayer. They talked about God. They talked one nation under God. They were not ashamed of their heritage of God. I just don't see that in the referendum movement and independence. Unfortunately, until that changes, I just don't see much hope in that referendum. We need God in the middle of this because we are fighting demons, just like Brad said. We are fighting very powerful, not only powerful organizations, powerful spiritual entities. The Bible calls them, the principalities in high places. In other words, big demons, big evil. And to counterattack that, you need help from God because we can't do this in our own strength. It doesn't matter how much people we have. It doesn't matter how much money we can raise. In the end of the day, if God is not in the middle of it, helping us against those entities, we're not going to succeed. We're not going to win. So my prayer is for the movement in Alberta, do what Americans did. Do what the MAGA movement did. Include God. Don't do any meetings without prayer. Worship, sing, humble yourself. Invite God, because the Bible says that God is God of liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, the scripture says. So God is God of freedom, right? Whose Son sets free is free indeed. So bring God. The moment you invite God into whatever you're doing, when he shows up, he comes with prosperity, he comes with healing, he comes with freedom, he comes with strength and power and truth. So that would be my encouragement to the movement in Alberta. Bring God to the movement. Let it him be a center of the movement, and then I would believe that is as a powerful success that will, be ahead of us. Until then, James, I just don't think it's going to happen. Sorry. I don't believe that they will allow the referendum and independence to happen unless God steps in and helps us, just like he did in your life. You're still alive. I'm sure they wanted to destroy you. I'm still alive. They hired assassins. They lit my house on fire. I mean, come on. And I know that, Brad, you face some crazy stuff as well. It looks like everyone and anyone that dares to speak the truth, it becomes a target. So Donald Trump, in my opinion, is still alive because he allowed God to be part of what he's doing. That doesn't mean that he's born again, fired up believer, James. I'm not saying that he is, a preacher right now. We all know Donald Trump, who he is. But he acknowledges God. He invites God in everything he's doing. When I was in Washington, D.C., I was invited to Washington, D.C. A few months ago to represent Canada. And I was, the same time I was there when Donald Trump declared that in May, he's going to rededicate United States of America back to God, one nation under God. Wow. So they are on the right track. They are actually trying to include God in their affairs. I just don't see that happening here.
My question that I would have to ask either Artur would be hypothetical. We have a victory in October where the votes are counted and tallied. I already know that that referendum will proceed forward. So between here and October, the conversations that I'm not seeing is the correlation of how the new constitution will be ratified, formed, developed, and where is the church body of church leadership in that conversation coming forward and saying, hey, you have a constitution here. You have this Canadian Charter of Rights under God and the rule of law. Well, we pastors in unity would like to present our prayers, our thoughts, and our communications in making sure that this constitution that you're going to ratify has God in it.
Yeah.
That would start a conversation throughout Alberta that is yet taking place, but it takes leadership, and you're praying for this. And as you were praying for it, my brain was getting an answer on a solution to your prayer. Is that it's going to how to bring God into this, how to bring unity into it is be a servant of God, show and lead with example, challenge other leaders of God to step up to that podium and have the conversation publicly in public forum with respects to a constitutional convention that will have to take place, and where are you going to put God in a brand new, one of a kind, history in the making constitution, so that we do not repeat the past.
Yeah.
Very important. Very important to push forward and get that conversation happening today so that you can get God back in.
Yeah. So to answer, in the quickest way is the pastors are not included or invited to the table. I even tried to knock at the doors. Even I knew that they are not really interested in bringing God into the conversation. And I contacted some of my friends there that are part of this. And I said, listen, I'm willing to come. I'm willing to bring God. I'm willing to bring other pastors. into this, because I think you need the support of the churches and the Christians. And they said no. And they said no. They didn't allow it. They don't want religion in the middle of this. So that's where we are standing at this moment. That doesn't mean that there are not many Christians that are part of this. I just had a meeting a week ago with some of the top people in Calgary that are part of the movement, and they are born again, fired up Christians. But the top leadership has not invited the clergy into the conversation. So we're kind of being pushed aside. And even my wife today, we had an American, a very high profile American visiting us, and we talked about this. And, and the thing is that they are believing that they can do this politically without the support of God. And my wife said to that American, he said, so why would we support a referendum on independence? In other words, we will replace one devilish system with another devilish system. Because without God, it's all corruption. Because that's how humans are. It's just a matter of time where corruption creeps in. Americans are so much better off because their documents are built on the Word of God. Their Declaration of Independence, their Constitution, it's God all over. And they don't have Section 1. And also, from some friends of mine that are in the middle, I was told that they are already gathering documents, constitutions from all over the world, and they are taking the best parts of other nations, including the United States of America Constitution, and they are trying to be ready and implement the best things from other countries. So that's a good beginning. That's a good strategy. But I would say, if I had an opportunity to talk to the leadership, bring pastors to the table publicly, bring the Christians to the table. Don't be afraid of people that are publicly talking about God. Americans did it, and they've won. They've won. They brought the community of Christians to the election, and look at the victory that Donald Trump had. And the moment they've elected the right administration, immediately everything started to shift, move slowly but surely to the right. In Canada and in Alberta, we have opposite. We're not moving to the right. We are actively moving to the left. The whole society in Canada, in Alberta, is moving to the left, more and more to the left every single day. In America, slowly but surely, everything is moving to the right. So there is hope for America. There is trouble for Canada until Canadians, Albertans will cry out to God. So we will see. A few months from now, we'll have the answer. As it stands right now, James, I believe it's not going to be successful, not because people don't want out. I think they want out. They are not going to allow it. And we will not have the strength and the power from above to be able to succeed if it comes to this. So anyway, that's just my opinion. That's what I'm observing in Alberta when I'm talking to people. There is this big sentiment within the churches and the pastors and the Christians that they don't want Christians. They don't want leaders in the churches at the table. So we kind of feel excluded. And there is this fear within the churches that, okay, we're going to replace one secular government with another secular government. So in other words, nothing will change for us. We will still be under a gun from this government or that government. It's like electing, I don't want to go as far as this, but just for the sake of the conversation, it's like you got a choice of the Nazis and the communists. If you're a Christian, you're screwed either way. You're under a gun either way, either this devil or that devil is still a devil, you know. So that's what I have been observing. And I talked to some leadership in Calgary that is, high up in Calgary, not the whole province, and they say the same thing. It's very hard. It's very hard for the born again Christians to be part of this, and they're trying to bring God into the movement, but they're getting roadblocks. They're getting walls being built, and they're getting very frustrated. So that's just what I was told, face to face conversations with some high ranking people here in the independence movement. And I know, as you know, James, just like you, I know lots of people within the freedom movement because of what we have been doing for the past few years. And this is what is coming back to me on a regular basis. They are afraid that if we get the independence, we're going to be in trouble anyway, because the leadership is excluding the clergy.
Interesting. I would say that you don't need their permission at all to have conversations. This is grassroots movement, and right now we really don't have defined leadership. We have influencers, just like the Freedom Convoy, which was under and birthed under God. There was influencers that came forward, but there was no leadership. And right now, what I'm seeing across the board in Alberta is there's a lot of different opportunities for town hall meetings where leadership makes itself present with its actions and in their words. So showing up at these town hall meetings with other pastors that are in unity, that would like to speak in regards to making sure that the Constitution that's being drafted right now as we speak has God put into it, and prayed about it and prayed over. And I think that you don't need anybody's permission, and recognizing that the majority right now realize that there is no leadership. There's influencers. So the real leader that we as Christians have to follow is being a servant and being called upon when God speaks to our heart to go out and do God's work. And you have an opportunity as pastors to come together to create a document that could potentially be that mega movement from a grassroots perspective. And really bring forward and bring back the Christianity that is inside Alberta. I know it is there. There is a very big Bible Belt, but who's going to lead those conversations? Because if you're waiting for the influencers, they're politicians. You're going to get more political stuff from these influencers. They're lawyers and politicians.
Yeah.
Right. So be the pastors and pastor and get in their face.
Well, I'd just like to add to this, right? The creator is absolutely key, because it all begins and it ends with spiritual warfare. And here is Bill C-9. It's literally criminalizing speech about the Bible. They have called their enemy out by saying the Bible, God, our creator, that's what we don't want you speaking about, or 2 years in jail for you. And then what everybody sees on the screen right now, pardon me, it's 5?
25.
25 years?
Yes, read the fine print.
They
showed at your door at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You could be facing 25 years in jail.
There you are.
Read it.
So they're
pretty scary.
That is why creator needs to be the part of the conversation from the get-go, which stood up the foundation 250 years ago. And just so everybody is aware of, we mentioned National Prayer Day. The May 17, 1776, George Washington declared that the National Day of Repentance. And then obviously we know what was established and stood up on July 4, 1776. We're coming in for that anniversary now, which is what President Trump is rededicating on May 17th, rededicating America and the Constitutional Republic of America to one sovereign nation under God. So as far as I'm concerned, spiritual warfare is the beginning and the end. It's the alpha and the omega. Everything else is in between. That's exactly what they've been doing to James, the other 240, plus the tens of thousands of other Canadians who have stood up, hundreds of thousands now that we're aware of it from the vaccine injury cases, and the ones that 400,000 that I'm not going to go to my job because I refuse a jab. That's 400,000 alone who have stood up and be counted. And then again, it all started to come to a massive awareness because of this man and his church. And everybody remembers these two words repeated 3 times: get out, get out, get out. You Nazis, how dare you, on the most sacred holiday of Passover, interrupting services. They planned that, in my opinion, on purpose to show up on force, to shut down that place of worship 5 years ago. So the beginning and the end is spiritual warfare. Everything else is in between. Financial, sure. Lawfare, sure. But it begins and ends with our eternal bodies and our souls, which have been brought forward because an incredible man named Jesus Christ, Yahshua, died on the cross for our sins so that we could stand up, be counted, and then we could see what the Creator is watching all of us right now, see what's going to take place over the next several months and year. I think there's massive pain. I agree with Pastor Arthur, you mentioned earlier, massive pain coming for all Canada right now. And it's already been indicated that Canada is a poorer nation on a per capita basis than the people of Alabama, United States.
Yeah.
It continues to go forward. So, gentlemen, over the next few minutes as we wrap up, if you don't mind sharing from your final messages, and I think it would be very appropriate for Pastor Pawlowski to cap this off in prayer as we sign off for the evening.
Yeah, James, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to both of you, beautiful human beings, for bringing us together again and letting us have a conversation and talk with followers across multiple spectrums. We're being tested, and we know that. And I think to go back to what you gave for the best advice is never give up, never give up, never give up, and keep fighting and keep serving, and keep on the pathway of the narrow. And I think if you do those things, everything else is going to be taken care of in your life. And just try to be the best version of yourself under God that you can be every day, and realize that we're not perfect human beings. We're going to make mistakes. It is what it is. We're not in imperfect times right now. We're being tested. And, remember who we serve at the end of the day. And what's really, truly what matters the most. And there's no fear in love. There's no fear in love, folks.
There is not. And I would just like to draw everybody's attention to James. It's been posted several times in the live chats. It's also below the show description for Give, Send, Go, because James, once again, is that outlaw in exile right here with his soon forthcoming book. That is the cover right now, and could use prayers, assistance, donations to continue forward, since he's living on his own, feeding 2 dogs, and waiting until he gets a social security number in the United States so he can start working again. So everything is by the grace of everybody in donations for James. And also he is on Twitter, X, and Facebook. And the X account for James is Trucker, number 4F for Freedom. You would see that coming up there as well.
Well, Brad, thank you so much again for allowing us to share our hearts. And James, like I said at the very beginning, you are our hero. We have not forgotten. Many of us are still under the boots of this crazy injustice, but we will keep plowing and we will keep putting that seed of truth and freedom and justice into the ground. And I know sooner or later we will see a great harvest. So let me pray for you. Father God, I bless Brad. I bless him, Father, for everything he's doing, for his willingness to keep doing the show, keep plowing and letting the people know what's really going on. According to Father, your word, the truth will set the captives free. I pray for James, every need that he has, all the financial things to support himself, lawyers and all of those things that he's facing. I pray that you would bless him and support him, bring everything that this man needs. I pray for favor in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth with the legal system, with lawyers, that they would understand the significance of this case, that even if the money is not coming or it's coming slowly, that they would still be willing to continue to fight because it's the right thing to do. I bless those that are watching this. Father God, bless them, keep them, protect them, heal them if they need healing. Open their eyes, open their ears, and give them the strength and ability to go and do the same thing for others, neighbors, family members, in the name of Jesus. And I also pray that you would always give us this supernatural strength not to quit, not to give up, not to throw a towel, but just keep doing what you called us to do. In the Bible, it says that we are to pick up our cross daily. That means there is struggle. That means there are difficulties. And the Bible says, even if we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. Why? Because God is there with me. So I bless the people with that. Remember, folks, God is hope, so don't lose hope. He's still sitting on the throne. He's not shaken by the globalists. He's not shaken by Carney or Carnage, as I call him. He's not shaken by those crazy people, those Faucis, those demon-possessed psychopaths of today. He has seen it before. I'm sure he's going to see it, in the future. In the end of the day, his perfect will be accomplished. And remember, every one of us, including the villains, will face the judge of judges, the one that doesn't take any bribe, the one that is not corrupted. And every man, listen to me, every man will receive what's due to them for everything they said, for everything they have done. Justice, sooner or later, will be served. Justice will be served. And every man will receive what he or she has worked for. So be blessed and don't lose hope. Keep doing what God called you to do, and tell others about hope. Tell others about amazing, mighty God, God of hope. Amen.
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 Thank you.
And streetchurch.ca is where you can all find Pastor Artur Pawlowski, the ministry, as well as Nathaniel at times when he's not busy with school or being arrested crossing the border, going to from his university at Liberty University, taking constitutional law. Is truly remarkable, everybody. And donations there, you can help with the fight as well. And additionally, once again, over on Amazon, amazon.com, Lions Do Not Bow, get copies. I would recommend, again, buy 5 to 6 of those copies, hold one for yourself, gift others to friends and family around the world. And I want to thank the audience, because we have had 2 hours here of the audience on Rumble from New Zealand who have chimed in, across Ontario, rest of Canada, parts of the United States, over to the United Kingdom. So this is truly a global audience of incredible patriots, with hundreds on Rumble and dozens which continue to show up in YouTube while we're still being hit with the demons getting on here. So gentlemen, thank you so much. It's a true honor. And you will be seeing a lot more of James Bauder and Pastor Artur Pawlowski and Norman Traversy and some of your other favorite Canadian patriots who are men and women of Christ out in this battle as we try to bring peace and prosperity to the rest of the world, everybody. So keep the Creator in your hearts, your mind, and your spirit every day. I'll end with that. Thank you, everybody. God bless you all too.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our Blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9mm, let us know. There we are, and we're done.